Hello, hello. It's Friday. What have I got for you today? Well, there was an Adelson hearing in preparation for the trial of Donna Adelson related to the murder of Dan Markel. You do not want to miss this episode. Hello, hello, hello. I'm Rebecca, Crafting and Crime Daily, and I recap live trials so you have something to listen to while you're crafting, whether it's Legos, diamond painting, crochet, whatever it is you like to do. You can do it while you're listening to this. So, if you've been around the true crime community for the last 10 years, we have been dealing with this case, several cases, all stemming from the July 18th, 2014 murder of FSU, Florida State University law professor. Yep, we're going back to Florida. We spend an awful lot of time in Florida. Florida, it's a hell of a drug. Yeah, anyway, you gotta put Taylor Swift in there somewhere, right? Okay, so this morning there was a motion hearing because Donna Adelson, and you're like, who's that? I'm gonna let you know. I'll tell you. She's on trial for conspiracy to commit murder, and some other stuff. Anyway, that trial starts September 17th. So how did we get here today? Well, let me tell you just a little bit about Dan Markel in case you're not familiar with this. I'll try to find the playlist that I had related to my coverage of the Markel. There's probably 50 videos at least. We've had 3 trials related to this. 3 trials? 3 trials. This will be the 4th trial related to this murder. Dan Markel is an FSU law professor. He is from Toronto, Canada, and he graduated from Harvard Law School. He met and married Wendy Adelson, who was at the time attending the University of Miami Law School. Her whole family was from South Florida, and born and raised in South Florida. Dad was a dentist. I think he's retired at this point. I think he's pretty up there, maybe in his 80s. Anyway, he's a dentist, and his son, Wendy's brother, was a dentist. So Dan marries Wendy. They live happily ever after. Nope. They have 2 young boys who at this point would be 14 and 15 years old. But at the time, they were, I think, 3 and 4 years old. So in any case, they were going through a very contentious divorce. She did not want to, I think the divorce had already been granted, but there was issues over the custody. She wanted to, they had 50-50 visitation. They were both employees of Florida State University Department of Law. She did some immigration work, I believe. So she didn't like Tallahassee. She wanted to come back and live with her parents, or not with her parents, but back to South Florida where her family is, her brother, her mom and dad. She wanted to go back to South Florida. Now there is another brother, another Adelson brother who he just like blew the coop. He's like, he don't want nothing to do with any of this. He lives in another state. He's married. He's a doctor. He doesn't have anything to do with any of this. So Wendy, and Dan were arguing over custody. She wanted to take the boys with her, and he's like, no, you are not leaving Tallahassee. Florida State University is in Tallahassee, Florida, which is way, way northeast in the panhandle of Florida, versus she wanted to go way south to South Florida. So they were battling constantly in court. Anytime you have 2 lawyers going at each other, there's motions filed. And he was getting ready to have a motion heard to exclude Grandma Donna Adelson from he wanted an injunction against her, I believe. She was demeaning him in front of the kids. And I mean, it's one of those motions, you know. So before the motion could happen, Dan, on one of the days that he had custody of the boys, they get up that morning, they have breakfast, he takes the little boys and he drops them off at daycare. He leaves daycare and he goes to the gym. I don't remember the name of the gym, but he goes to the gym. There's surveillance footage that's later on found that was showing him going in the gym, showing him coming out of the gym. He goes home, he pulls into his driveway. Now, his neighbors are alerted because, you know, it's one of those, "Oh, look, Dan's home." But he never got out of his car. Wonder what's going on. And then they look and they see this car backing up, a Toyota that's backing up, and it takes off. So this guy has a pretty good description of the vehicle. So what happens is after Dan pulled in that driveway, two men pull up in this vehicle behind him in the driveway. Dan's on the phone with somebody. He's sitting in his car. He's on the phone. I don't remember, something related to the kids. And this man walks up to the window, shoots him in the head through the glass. Nevertheless, he's not killed instantly. He was alive when EMS got there. There's been some talk about whether there was a delay in EMS responding because of the type of the call was put out. But in any case, they get to him, they get him to the hospital. He's still alive when he gets to the hospital and does pass away very shortly thereafter from his head injury. But, oh, horrendous. So meanwhile, Wendy, his ex-wife, is having lunch with friends. Police go over to her, find her at this where she's having lunch. They bring her down to the police department. They tell her that your husband has been killed. Your ex-husband has been killed. She's boo-hooing. And during this interview, she tells the police, well, you know, she happens to mention that her brother had happened to purchase. She was at home that morning because she was waiting for Best Buy to come repair a TV that her brother had purchased for her. And he had made a joke when he purchased this TV that this was her divorce gift. It was cheaper than hiring a hitman. Now, at this point in time, Wendy had just broken up with another boyfriend named Jeffrey Lacoste, and he will be coming into this trial as a witness as to what she said. According to Mr. Lacoste, she actually told him, Wendy told him that they had actually looked into hiring a hitman. Long story short, two hitmen were hired from Miami. Sigfredo, oh God, what is his name? Sigfredo Garcia, not Garcia. Is it Sigfredo Garcia? Yes, Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera, who is the head of the Latin Kings, this huge gang in South Florida. And they go up in July. They stay in Tallahassee for a couple of days. They commit the murder. They take the turnpike and come home. So how did these two hitmen get hired? Well, Wendy's brother, this is a long story, guys. Wendy's brother, I just dropped something. Wendy's brother, Charlie, who's a periodontist, a traveling periodontist at the time. So he would just go from office to office, dentist office, to wherever people needed him to come do the work. And so he was all over South Florida. But one of those offices, he met a woman named Catherine Magbanua. And Catherine had two young children fathered by Sigfredo Garcia, who was related to, very best friends with Luis Rivera, this gang member. Now, I don't know if Sigfredo was a member of these gangs, but not the best sort of people you want to be around. Anyway, Charlie's dating this woman and hires her, or gets her to hire her ex-husband. Well, they said they were husband and wife. They were never married, and there's no common law in Florida, but to hire her, so-called husband and his friend to commit this murder. And in exchange, she was paid a lot of money by the Adelson family. She was given a car. She was given paychecks from the Adelson Dental Institute to make it look like she worked there. But she had this plastic surgery, boob job that she paid for in cash. So she goes on trial. She's eventually arrested. It takes the police years to unravel all of the evidence leading up to these arrests and convictions. But the first trial involves Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine Magbanua, the so-called husband and wife. Luis Rivera was already in jail when everybody was arrested on some other charges related to Rico and, him being a gang member. He decides he's going to take a plea, and he got a sweet deal, like one that would see him out in 12 years for this murder in exchange for his testimony. And he's had to testify every single time there's a trial. So the first trial is Sigfredo, Catherine. So Sigfredo gets convicted of this hit and is serving a life sentence, plus some other life sentence plus. Yes, none of these people are getting out. Catherine, the jury had come back with Catherine hung. So mistrial. So we get another trial as to Catherine Magbanua. And Catherine took the stand and had a lot of things to say, a lot of which she retracts in her testimony in a later trial. In any case, Catherine, we have a trial regarding Catherine. So she gets convicted during her trial of conspiracy to commit murder and that whole thing. And then we get, finally, during this trial of Catherine, we learned that there was a meeting at a restaurant called Dolce Vita between Catherine and Charlie where they're discussing this sting operation by the police called The Bump. All of this is going to be part of this trial coverage starting on September 15th, 17th. So I just want to kind of give you a flavor for what's going to be thrown at us. So they get this, they have an undercover cop in the restaurant. He's recording this conversation, but it's very difficult to hear. Well, following Catherine's trial, they hire an expert to refine the recording of that restaurant conversation between Catherine and Charles. They arrest Charlie Adelson, the periodontist, and we have another trial. And that was late last year, 2023, I believe. 2023. Latter part of 2023. Maybe even December, not sure. But in any case, in this trial, Catherine takes the stand and tells this bizarre story and he takes the stand and tells this bizarre story, and it's just crazy. But one of the things she says on the stand is that night, after the murders, where she came over to Charlie's house to get paid, that Donna Adelson came that night with the money. So we expect that she will probably testify. I don't know if she's getting anything in exchange for her testimony, if they've, softened her sentence. I haven't heard that. But Charlie gets convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and all that stuff 1 week later. And there's a lot of thoughts that the entire Adelson family is guilty here. A lot of opinions. Donna Adelson, her husband Harvey, and Wendy. At the point Charlie's convicted, those three are still out there living their lives, raising those two little boys in South Florida. They change those little boys' last names. They don't keep the Markel name. They won't let the Markel grandparents from Canada come visit those kids. And to the point where the Markels had to go to the Florida legislature and have grandparent laws instituted so they could have rights to see their child. And thank God they did that, because grandparents should have rights to see their grandchildren. In any case, 1 week after the conviction of Charles Adelson, Donna Adelson is stopped at the Miami International Airport. her and Harvey had they had an emergency visa and a one-way ticket to Vietnam, and they found evidence that she apparently is going to come into this trial that she was searching non-extradition locations. And Vietnam is a place where if you go, you can't be extradited back to the U.S. So why am I talking about this today? For the last 15 minutes? That's such an abbreviated version of this whole thing. It is such a tangled web. Those are the players. Wendy's never been arrested. Harvey was not arrested, but Donna was arrested. Grandma. And today they were in court for motion hearings ahead of the trial. So the first thing the judge points out to Donna Adelson is, you've got Mr. Rashbaum as your attorney. This is the same attorney that represented your son. That is a conflict of interest. So he may have, and he's telling her, he may have information that he gleaned from communications with your son that he can't tell you about. He can't, and she's like, I'm okay with it. She waives the conflict. She's going to continue letting him represent her. Okay. Then the first motion was to dismiss the indictment. And the defense argued that they had 9 years to arrest this woman. Why did they wait 9 years? They had the evidence they used at all 3 trials is the same evidence that they're going to use at this trial. They could have arrested her way before that. And if they had, because of the delay now in arresting her, there's information we could have obtained to defend her that's no longer available to us. For example, SunPass records, because there's allegations that she left her home in Miami, took the turnpike, using her SunPass to get up to Charlie's house to give the money to him and Catherine. The SunPass records are not available anymore. They don't retain them. And they just asked, what's the retention on those? And there was an answer. I don't recall what it was, but so that was one of the things that they've been prejudiced by. The text and the call records of Donna Adelson, not available anymore. Can't. And he said, the state could have gotten these at any time. They could have gotten her call records, 9 years ago. Why didn't they get them? So, like I said, first of all, it took the police probably 3 of those 9 years to figure all this out. And then the state got up and said that they didn't realize that money was actually exchanging hands through Donna Adelson until they heard the testimony of Catherine McBanoa. And that's when they realized they had enough to arrest Donna Adelson. The other thing the defense argued was that the state waited so long because they thought everybody would flip. And when nobody flipped, now they're trying to try everybody. And that's absolutely true. That's the reason it took. Catherine McBanoa spent 6 years in jail before her conviction, and she's got small children at home. And they just kept thinking, oh, she's going to flip. She's going to turn evidence. She's going to testify for it. She refused. All 6 of those years, refused to turn evidence. Would not do it. You'd think she would do it, cut a deal, go home with her kids. Nope, she never did it. So the judge denied this motion, of course. Yeah. So we're going forward with the trial on the 17th. So the next motion was to use a different courtroom. They wanted to use a bigger courtroom. They argued that all those trials have been held in the same courtroom, and they're saying it's too small, that people can hear what the defendants are saying to their attorneys and vice versa. And there's too much media, and, that whole thing. And the judge says, no, we're not going to use another courtroom. We're going to use this courtroom. It worked before. It'll work now. I'll give everybody instructions. If anybody violates my instructions, then I'll have them removed from the courtroom, but we're not changing courtrooms. Then there was a motion to suppress the wiretaps, the Dolce Vita wiretaps. The judge denied that one. It was sort of just a here I'm making the motion because I need to make this motion for the record. They knew it was going to be denied. Then motion to use a jury questionnaire, which a lot of judges like that. He doesn't. He says, no, we didn't use it last time. We're not going to use it this time. I'll be instructing the jury. We'll be fine. Okay. Then the defense didn't want any evidence of the defendant's wealth to come into the trial. And so what they agreed on was if she used any assets to pay for this murder, that would come in. But the state's not going to be allowed to go, hey, don't you have $10 million in the bank? And in other words, you got plenty of money to cover this murder. They're not going to do that. Okay. They are rich. They made a lot of money in the dental practice. Then there was a motion to suppress hearsay evidence that will be offered by the guy I told you about, Wendy's ex-boyfriend, Jeff Lacoste. And that has to do with the TV and the hitman statement. And he's going to testify, or he would like to testify, that she told him they actually looked into hiring a hitman. Now, the way they got around this during Charles's trial was they asked Wendy, hey, Wendy, did you ever tell Jeff Lacoste, blah, blah, blah? And she's like, no. So she denies it. So now they can bring Jeff Lacoste on to argue against her credibility. In other words, look, she lied. He says she said it. So the judge said, it can come in under certain circumstances, like it did the last time. If it's coming in to establish or, against someone's credibility, then it's going to come in. Anyway, the fact that Wendy wrote a book, I don't think that's going to come in. The fact that the grandparents did not allow visitation of these children, and they changed their names, I don't believe that that's going to come in. I think the judge is going to reserve ruling until it comes out in court about whether or not that's going to come in. The state argued that, not only did all these people murder Dan Markel, but they tried to completely erase him from their lives, those boys' lives, by changing their names. Then there was a question about jail phone calls between Charlie Adelson, Wendy's brother that was convicted, and Donna Adelson. And their phone calls where she is talking about, she's going to commit suicide, and these are obviously coming in to show consciousness of guilt. And the judge on those reserved, he's going to see how that comes out at trial. Autopsy photos, the defense wanted autopsy photos left out. They always argue this. This is a standard motion in limine. It's always argued to keep the autopsy photos out. The state always wins. They always get them in. One of the things the state has to prove is that the victim is dead. And they do not have to accept a stipulation, because the defense will always say, we'll stipulate. Yes, he's dead. We'll stipulate to that. They're like, no, we don't want to stipulate to it. We want to show the autopsy photos. And we're not going to show like the head open, the body open. We're just going to show the autopsy photo, the photos of his body that were taken out before that internal examination. And the judge said, okay. Of course he did. They always let them in. I don't need to see them though. I don't, if you guys know, if I'm ever a juror, that I'm going to close my eyes during those photos. And they can just tell me when it's over, because I don't need to see him. I believe you. He's dead. It was gruesome. I believe you. But it always comes in. Anyway. Then the last one, which was the most interesting one of the day, and one I was really curious about, defense filed a motion to exclude Donna Adelson's travel as consciousness of guilt evidence. That should not come in. And he says, she got her visa, she made plans, she told everybody she knew she was going. She had a hotel there. Like, all this is okay. And the judge is like, well, it doesn't have to be, what was the word he used? Like she's just because she didn't try to hide it doesn't mean she wasn't trying to flee, or doesn't, that kind of thing. So apparently they had purchased a timeshare in Vietnam it's a Vietnamese villa that they had over there, and they only get it for a few days of the year. But the state got up and argued, listen, she got an emergency visa. She researched countries where there was no extradition, and she had a one-way ticket. Hello? And the judge's like, oh no, that can come in. That can come in. Okay. Oh, one of the other things that will not be allowed to be mentioned is because we expect that this Louis Rivera, one of the hitmen, will testify, and they'll be able to ask him about his affiliation with, you're affiliated with gangs, yes, but they can't mention Latin Kings. They're not going to mention specific gangs. The defense wants to mention that it's Latin Kings because I'm not from South Florida. I lived in South Florida like 100 years ago. That's where I raised my kids. I don't remember the Latin Kings, but I was in Fort Lauderdale. I wasn't in Miami, and it certainly wasn't present day. And I don't know what the influence of the Latin Kings is on that community, in present day or even 10 years ago. So maybe it's very significant, and they're saying that this is a reason Donna did some of the things she did, because she knew it was the Latin Kings. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't mean to go into all that detail, but you can't tell this story without telling the story. Anyway, and don't tell me I left stuff out, because I probably did. It's a very long, involved story. As this trial evolves and certain things come out, we'll start talking about the intricate details of what occurred. So, hi, wonderful weekend. Do the Friday dance. Florida, it's a hell of a drug. Florida. Anyway, I love that song. It's a Taylor Swift song with Florence and the Machine. And now that's a singer. Taylor's a good songwriter, but Florence, she can sing. And anyway, that was a real digression, wasn't it? Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll see you on Monday. Oh, Monday's Labor Day, maybe Tuesday. Take care. Bye.